The holographic notification flickered in Nathan Walsh's living room, its harsh blue light illuminating his weathered face. By order of the Interstellar Coalition, all eligible Lyrian females must provide accommodation for 2 human male residents within 48 hours. Nathan ran his fingers through his graying hair, wondering how his quiet life as a xenobotanist had led to this moment. The streets of New Seattle buzzed with hovercars and protesters. Some carried signs reading "Earth for Humans," while others promoted "Unity through Understanding." Nathan had always stayed out of politics, preferring the company of his hybrid plants to the chaos of human-alien relations. But now, politics had literally come home. His communication pad chimed. "Nathan? You got the notice too?" His colleague David's face appeared, looking as confused as Nathan felt. "The botanical department is in chaos. Half our Lyrian researchers have already left." "I don't understand why they're implementing this now," Nathan replied, watching another protest march pass below his apartment window. The Lyrians had arrived on Earth 5 years ago, their superior technology helping humanity solve its climate crisis. But their strict matriarchal society had created tensions, especially among human men who felt threatened by their presence. A soft chime interrupted their conversation, another notification. Nathan's breath caught as he read the assignment details. Tharak Voss, Senior Botanical Engineer. He knew her by reputation, her work on atmospheric purification had saved countless lives. And now she would be living in his home, along with another human male he'd never met. The next day passed in a blur of preparation. Nathan cleared out his spare room, tucked away his more controversial research notes, and tried to make his apartment look less like a greenhouse. His plants, sensing his anxiety, drew their leaves inward. As dusk approached, a sleek silver transport descended onto his landing pad. Nathan straightened his collar, trying to remember the proper Lyrian greeting protocols. The transport's door opened with a soft hiss. Tharak Voss stood nearly 7 feet tall, her iridescent skin shifting colors in the fading light. 4 arms were crossed in what Nathan recognized as a defensive posture. Behind her, a human man in a business suit carried a single bag, looking as uncomfortable as Nathan felt. "I am Tharak Voss," she announced, her translator rendering her musical language into crisp English. "This is Richard Bennett, my other assigned host." Her upper arms remained crossed while her lower ones performed the traditional greeting gesture. "Welcome to my home," Nathan managed, returning the gesture. "I'm Nathan Walsh. Please, come in." As they entered, Nathan noticed how Tharak's skin darkened slightly, a sign of stress in Lyrians. Richard kept glancing between them, his jaw tense. The apartment's environmental controls adjusted automatically to the Lyrians' preferred temperature, another reminder of how their technology had become integrated into daily life. "I must be direct," Tharak said once they were seated. "This arrangement was not my choice. My research requires privacy and stability. However, we must all adapt to survive." Her lower right hand absently touched a pendant at her throat, a family crest, Nathan realized. Richard cleared his throat. "I work in interspecies law. Perhaps we can find a way to challenge this mandate." "The mandate is not what it seems," Tharak replied, her skin rippling with patterns Nathan had never seen before. "But speaking of its true purpose would put us all in danger." She looked between the two men, her large, faceted eyes reflecting the room's light. "For now, we must appear to comply while we discover why your government and mine are so intent on this arrangement." Nathan glanced at his plants, noticing how they had begun to lean toward Tharak, drawn to something his instruments couldn't detect. Whatever was really happening, he realized his quiet life of research was over. He was now part of something much bigger, and potentially much more dangerous, than he'd ever imagined. The first week of cohabitation proved more complex than any of Nathan's xenobotanical experiments. Tharak converted half the spare room into a makeshift laboratory, her equipment humming at frequencies that made the plants shiver. Richard spent most of his time making encrypted calls, his lawyer's instincts clearly sensing something beneath the surface of the mandate. One evening, Nathan found Thera studying his hybrid plants with all four hands moving in perfect coordination, taking measurements he couldn't comprehend. "Your work," she said without turning around, "it's more advanced than you've published." Her skin shifted to a deep violet, curiosity, he'd learned. "Some discoveries aren't ready for public knowledge," Nathan replied, thinking of the locked files in his personal database. "Especially now, with tension so high. Like how these specimens respond to Lyrian biorhythms." Thera's upper right hand gestured to a vine that had wrapped itself around her arm, pulsing in sync with her skin's color changes. "You've created a bridge between our species." Richard appeared in the doorway, his usual suit replaced by casual clothes. "Speaking of bridges, I've found something interesting in the mandate's legal framework." He glanced at the security sensors. "But not here. We should take a walk." The streets of New Seattle were quieter now, most protesters replaced by increased security patrols. As they walked, Richard explained in careful terms how the housing mandate structure mirrored ancient Earth customs of political marriages, alliances formed through cohabitation. "But why pairs of human males?" Nathan asked, watching Thera's skin ripple with what might have been amusement. "Because they fear us," she answered, her four arms moving in the complex gesture patterns Lyrians used for emphasis. "Not our technology or our strength, but our ability to adapt. To change." She stopped walking, her tall form casting multiple shadows under the street lights. "Your governments believe that by forcing this arrangement, they can better control the integration of our species." Richard nodded. "The legal patterns suggest they're preparing for something bigger. These housing units aren't just homes, they're test sites." A security drone hummed overhead, and they fell silent until it passed. Nathan noticed how Thera's lower arms had moved protectively toward her pendant, while her upper arms remained deliberately still. There was something she wasn't telling them. Back at the apartment, Nathan found his security systems had been upgraded. Thera's equipment had spread further into the living space, and Richard's legal documents now filled a hidden partition in the home's computer core. "We're being watched," Richard announced, showing them a detection program on his tablet. "Not by Earth security or the Lyrian embassy. Someone else." Thera's skin darkened to almost black. "The confluence," she whispered. "They're here earlier than expected." When Nathan and Richard stared at her, she touched her pendant. "There are factions among my people who believe integration with humans will destroy us. They call themselves the Confluence. This mandate, it's not just about control. It's about survival." "Whose survival?" Nathan asked, but before Thera could answer, every plant in his apartment suddenly recoiled, their leaves curling inward. The security systems blinked red. "They're coming," Thera said, her skin pulsing with urgent patterns. "And now we must decide, do we fight together, or let them tear our worlds apart?" She reached out with her lower arms to both men, while her upper arms activated something in her pendant. "There's no time to explain everything, but know this, what grows between us in the next few days will determine the fate of both our species." Nathan looked at Richard, saw his own decision reflected in the lawyer's eyes. They each took one of Thera's hands as the apartment's lights flickered and died, leaving them in darkness broken only by the bioluminescent patterns flowing across their alien companion's skin. Something was rising in the night sky over New Seattle, something that would force them to redefine not just their living arrangement, but what it meant to be human or Lyrian in a universe that was about to change forever. The darkness in Nathan's apartment lasted only moments before Thera's bioluminescence filled the space with an ethereal glow. Her pendant projected a holographic map of the solar system, with pulsing red markers appearing at strategic points. "The confluence ships," she explained, her four hands manipulating the projection. "They've been hiding in the Kuiper Belt, waiting. This housing mandate, it wasn't just about integration. It was about creating safe houses." Richard's legal training showed in his rapid analysis. the government knew they were coming. That's why the mandate's language mirrors wartime emergency protocols. Nathan watched his plants responding to some unseen stimulus, their movements becoming more agitated. They're reacting to something in orbit, he said, years of research clicking into place. The hybrid specimens, they're not just bridges between our species. They're early warning systems. Thara's skin rippled with confirmation patterns. Your plants detect quantum disturbances. The confluence uses weaponized probability manipulation. They don't just want to stop integration, they want to rewrite the timeline where our species ever met. A sharp knock at the door froze them all. Through the security feed, they saw two figures in environmental protection uniforms. Standard procedure during power outages, except Nathan noticed their badges were slightly wrong. Back in trance, Richard whispered, already moving. I installed a scrambler field yesterday. They slipped out just as the false officers began overriding the front door lock. Thara's height made her conspicuous, but her skin adapted to match the urban environment's colors. Nathan carried a case of his most important specimens, while Richard clutched his tablet containing evidence of the conspiracy. The streets of New Seattle had changed. Security drones flew in new patterns, and the few pedestrians moved with suspicious purposefulness. Above, the night sky rippled with subtle distortions. The Botanical Research Center, Nathan suggested. My lab has secure isolation chambers. Too obvious, Thara countered, her lower arms guiding them while her upper ones monitored something through her pendant. They'll expect us to seek familiar ground. We need to go where neither human nor Lyrian authorities will look. Richard smiled for the first time since the crisis began. I know a place. My firm handles refugee cases. There's an old maintenance tunnel network, officially decommissioned but actually used by underground activists helping aliens avoid registration. As they navigated the city's underbelly, Thara explained more. The confluence believed that human-Lyrian integration would lead to their species' extinction, not through violence but through gradual biological and cultural merging. The housing mandate had been a joint operation between human and Lyrian progressives, using forced proximity to prove that coexistence wouldn't just work, it was essential for both species' survival. Your plants, she said to Nathan as they descended deeper into the tunnels, they've already shown how our biology can harmonize. And Richard's legal work protecting alien refugees demonstrated humanity's capacity for acceptance. That's why we were matched together. We're proof their fears are unfounded. Look, Richard pointed to his tablet. Underground communications are going crazy. Similar situations all over the city. Other groups like us, running from confluence hunters. Nathan felt his specimen case vibrating. The plants were reacting to something ahead. Around a corner, they found another group, a human woman scientist, her Lyrian housemate, and a human male security officer, all looking as harried as they felt. The safe houses are compromised, the security officer reported. They're using probability weapons to make raids succeed despite impossible odds. Thara's skin pulsed with decision patterns. Then we make our own probability. She opened her pendant, revealing not just a communication device but a quantum computer core. Every housing group like us, we're not random pairings. We're nodes in a network. Together, we can generate a quantum interference field strong enough to neutralize their weapons. A distributed probability shield, Nathan realized, watching his plants reach toward Thara's pendant. Using the natural quantum entanglement that develops between species living in close proximity. That's why they needed us to live together, Richard added. Not just to prove coexistence works, but to create an organic defense network. Above them, the city trembled as the confluence began their attack. But in the tunnels beneath New Seattle, humans and Lyrians who had been forced together by law were choosing to stand together by choice. As Thara activated her pendant's full power, Nathan saw his plants glowing with the same patterns as her skin, and felt something shift in the fabric of reality itself. The real fight for their future was about to begin, and it would be won not with weapons, but with the quantum bonds formed between those who dared to bridge the gap between worlds. The tunnels beneath New Seattle became a web of resistance. Nathan's plants, now glowing with Lyrian bioluminescence, created a living network that connected the scattered groups of humans and aliens. Through Richard's legal contacts, they learned that similar networks were forming in cities worldwide. Thera worked tirelessly, her 4 hands coordinating quantum calculations as she linked more pendants into their growing defense grid. The Confluence didn't expect this level of adaptation, she explained, her skin showing patterns of fierce determination. They thought forced proximity would prove their fears correct. Instead, it's given us strength they never imagined. A breakthrough came when Nathan noticed how his hybrid plants weren't just responding to quantum disturbances, they were actively stabilizing local probability fields. Look at this, he showed Thera, pointing to a specimen that pulsed in perfect harmony with her pendant. They're not just detecting the weapons, they're naturally counteracting them. Richard emerged from a communication session with his underground contacts, his expression grim. The Confluence isn't just trying to separate our species. They're after something specific, genetic data from successful integration cases. They're terrified of something in our combined DNA. Thera's skin shifted to a deep, revelatory purple. The awakening, she whispered. It's happening faster than anyone predicted. Her pendant projected a complex genetic matrix, showing human and Lyrian DNA interweaving in unexpected patterns. Living together, even briefly, has accelerated natural quantum entanglement between our species. We're not just coexisting, we're evolving. A distant explosion rocked the tunnel system. The Confluence was getting closer, their probability weapons creating chaos above ground. But each failed attack strengthened the quantum shield generated by the housing network. They call it the Convergence Protocol, Thera revealed, all 4 arms moving in urgent explanation patterns. A theoretical point where human and Lyrian quantum fields align perfectly. The Confluence believes it will erase our biological distinctions entirely. But they don't understand, it's not about losing ourselves. It's about becoming something greater. Nathan watched his plants reaching toward both humans and Lyrians equally, their hybrid nature a preview of what might come. These specimens, he realized, they're not just a bridge. They're a blueprint. Richard's tablet lit up with urgent messages. The Confluence is changing tactics. They're targeting specific housing units, ones showing the strongest quantum resonance. Through their growing network, they felt other groups under attack. Each assault disrupted probability itself, creating ripples of chaos through their quantum shield. But with every wave, the connections between human and Lyrian defenders grew stronger. Thera's pendant suddenly pulsed with unprecedented power. They're here, she announced, her skin displaying warning patterns none of them had seen before. Not just their weapons, their leaders. The ones who would rather destroy both our species than let us transform. Above them, reality itself seemed to bend as Confluence ships engaged Earth's defense forces. But in the tunnels, something else was taking shape, a new kind of defense born from the very integration their enemies feared most. Nathan looked at his companions, Richard with his legal documents proving the mandate's true purpose, Thera with her quantum technology that had found unexpected harmony with Earth life, and his own plants that bridged the gap between worlds. They were no longer reluctant housemates or even allies of convenience. They had become living proof that evolution cared nothing for artificial barriers. As the final battle approached, the true purpose of the housing mandate became clear, it had never been about control or monitoring. It was about creating the perfect conditions for a leap forward in human and Lyrian evolution, a leap that would either elevate both species or end them both. The Confluence's final assault began with a ripple of impossible events. Probability weapons turned rain into glass, gravity reversed in random pockets, and time itself stuttered through the streets of New Seattle. But in the tunnels, the housing network held firm. Nathan's hybrid plants had spread throughout the underground system, their quantum stabilizing properties creating safe zones where reality remained constant. Richard coordinated with other groups through encrypted channels, directing them to these stable points while documenting everything for posterity. Thera stood at the heart of their quantum shield, all four arms moving in complex patterns as she manipulated the growing network of pendants. "The convergence protocol," she announced, her skin flickering with intense patterns, "it's not just theory anymore. Look." Through her pendant's projection, they watched as human and Lyrian DNA began synchronizing across the network. Not merging or overriding, but harmonizing in ways that defied conventional genetics. The quantum entanglement between species had reached critical mass. "They're retreating," Richard reported, watching tactical displays. "Their weapons, they're having the opposite effect. Instead of disrupting our connection, they're strengthening it." Nathan understood first. "The plants," he said, touching a glowing vine. "They're not just stabilizing probability. They're showing us what we can become. Life finds a way to adapt, to evolve, to transform." The confluence ships above the city began to fade, their probability weapons useless against the growing quantum resonance below. But as they retreated, they left behind a changed world. The housing mandate had succeeded beyond its creator's wildest dreams, creating not just coexistence but true symbiosis. Thera's skin displayed patterns of both triumph and wonder. "The awakening isn't an end," she said, reaching out to both her human companions. "It's a beginning. We're not losing our identities, we're gaining the ability to understand each other completely." 3 months later, Nathan's apartment had transformed. His plants now grew in impossible patterns, quantum entangled with both human and Lyrian life. Richard had turned their story into a legal framework for true integration, protecting the rights of both species as they explored their new potential. And Thera, her skin now capable of expressing emotions that had no name in either language, continued her research. But now she studied not just the changes in others, but the miraculous transformation they had all undergone. The forced housing arrangement had become a voluntary partnership, stronger for having been tested by fire. "The confluence was right about one thing," she said one evening, as they watched the sunset through quantum-stabilized air. "We cannot go back to what we were." But they never understood, we were never meant to stay the same. Nathan looked at his plants, at Richard's legal tablets showing the new framework for their society, at Thera's pendant now permanently synchronized with their quantum field. "Sometimes," he said, "the best families are the ones we choose after being forced together." The housing mandate had ended officially, but across the city, most groups chose to stay together. They had discovered something profound in their forced proximity, not just the ability to coexist, but the chance to evolve into something greater than the sum of their parts. Above them, the stars shone with new possibility. The confluence's defeat had opened the way for other species to approach Earth, drawn by the success of human-Lyrian integration. And in Nathan's apartment, like thousands of others across the globe, the future was already growing, one quantum-entangled moment at a time.